there's a company here, which I also encourage you to check out in the Blanco room, that is actually working to solve this problem and to put the value back in the hands of creators. And that company is Lamina1. So, look at this sizzle reel.
Driving a movement to create the open metaverse. Not just VR, not just AR, but a really rich open economy.
What we're attempting to do at Lamina1 is to supply some of the infrastructure that would make it a sustainable proposition for creators of metaverse content to actually build.
Just build a protocol. We really focused our time and energy on how to build out not only a protocol, but the platform stack on top of it that was no code that would connect IP holders directly with their fans.
That looks great as well. Lamina1's going to put the value back in the hands of the creators. So let's learn how that's going to be done with the CEO of Lamina1, Rebecca Barkin.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me, y'all.
Don't sit on your mic. So, how you doing?
Good, good. This is great. It's awesome.
Now, Neil Stevenson is credited for many, many things. Mm-hmm. In fact, he's credited for the term metaverse, virtual reality, AI, even cryptocurrency. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
He wrote a couple of great books.
A bunch, yeah.
A bunch.
Yeah.
Snow Crash. What's the other one?
Diamond Age,
that I forgot.
Cryptonomicon.
Yeah. Those are all fantastic. How does that, and such a legend in the space, how did that help create Lamina1?
Yeah, so I mean, Neil and I have worked together for about 8 years. It started at Magic Leap, which was an augmented reality company. We raised about $4.5 billion. He was always, people don't realize this, but Neil, in addition to being an author, was always a technologist. He was always a gamer, and he's a history buff, too. But in 1992, he published a novel that would become legend, and that was Snow Crash. So originally, it was meant to be a computer-generated graphic novel, but when it was finally published as a novel, and it became even more so with time, it became a huge hit, right? So at one point, it actually was required reading at places like Meta for their product managers, which is kind of ironic. But amid all of that success, he got a major Hollywood studio deal. And that studio sat on that content for 30 years. So imagine this, right? He had no rights to do a prequel, sequel, to revisit any of the IP of the story that he created. He couldn't touch it, which is just crazy. So meanwhile, this novel, which so brilliantly kind of articulated the concept of the metaverse and actually coined the term itself, had inspired countless entrepreneurs and engineers to actually try to build that future that he had envisioned. So there is a very, very personal nature to the mission behind Lamina1, right? This is about actually building a platform that allows creators a new path to retaining IP ownership, distribution, and monetization of their creative work. And I think that's really important because to date, no one has had the resources really to reach people in the way that studios could. So the cost of distribution in creation was just so high that creators could never really forego that kind of existing system. But all of this is changing, obviously, at record speed, like now that we have advanced computing power, we have AI, we have the maturation of the internet. So this archaic legacy entertainment system, the model itself can finally be challenged by a tech stack that's mature enough to actually handle it. So we think the next major unlock for this entirely new creative economy is ownership and IP participation.
Well, clearly it did have a big effect novel on people at Facebook, including Mark Zuckerberg, who changed the name to Meta.
Yeah,
Metaverse,
that's right.
So it's pretty incredible. What's even more astounding is that people who owned the IP sat on it for 30 years. I don't even understand that, but like you said, the people who owned it had different incentives. And
right.
Poor thing is that Neil couldn't even do anything with it outside of it. The whole IP was just owned by Meta. So in Web 2, through e-commerce and all these other platforms, social, there's been a lot of new creators being created. You would think in Web 2 it would be a little better, but it seems like the same thing is happening. New creators on a different platform, different distribution, but the value is still being captured by those large behemoths.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think if you've ever loved a product, right, or a show, you kind of know what this means, right? So in the early 2000s, tech platforms actually played a really supportive role in content distribution. So particularly in terms of really cost-effective international exposure for indie projects, whether they're games or movies and mid-market. But now they just own the whole damn ecosystem. I mean, the hardware, the software, the accessories, the payments, and those people are making decisions about what stories get to be told. I mean, it's bullshit. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that Apple, they've produced some products and some projects that I definitely love. But I think it's super important to acknowledge that their incentives, for doing so are quite different, right? The impetus to fund content development, comes from their desire to drive frequency in the software and hardware buying cycles for consumers, right? Because the more that you engage, the more they know, the more they sell, and they sell it more efficiently. And content, if you've made VR or AR, you know this, content is often funded with really rigid conditions regarding the specific kind of software or hardware that you can use to make it. You have exclusivity, you have very cumbersome app store economics. And then, of course, you have the deprecation of those devices a year later, in the case of AR and VR, and they're just shelved forever. So creators and consumers have really gotten caught in this modern day kind of concept of a format war, and we're asked to just simply live with it. But it is fundamentally broken. So Lamina1 aims to really take storytelling back from tech platforms and return it to the people who do it best, right? So that means multimedia content, like games, videos, digital assets, organized around the creator and their fans, right? And you can imagine this kind of interconnected world of experiences that are spawned by your favorite storytellers. And then you imagine they actually invite you to play in those IP universes. So, we are an open creator economy platform, and we are owned by its network of creators, fans, and of course, validators.
Well, I think everyone in this room agrees that content should be owned by creators and the users.
100%.
And that is going to happen over time. And I think with blockchain and open innovation, it will happen.
Yeah.
At least I hope. Tell me how you're going to do it.
I mean, absolutely. So, Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, recently said, soon players and gamers and fans will be able to create their own stories and experiences. And they'll be able to express that fandom. And they'll be able to share content with each other in ways that they love. But I think a really critical question that we need to ask is, where will they do that? How will they actually participate in the wealth that they're creating for those franchises. So we know we're not going to change it all overnight. I mean, legacy licensing and distribution models lock in major IPs. But I definitely believe that tomorrow's biggest IPs will be here. Like, they will be found and discovered and built on blockchain, because we finally have the right tech stack to actually create this new economy that is just really rich and diverse and transparent in how it rewards popularity and participation in entertainment. But I think, for creators to actually really benefit, this new economy has to be big enough to support them. Like, it has to be big enough for them to thrive. And really, the network effect of blockchains can do that. It can create a new economy. So our platform aims to allow creators to incubate, iterate, monetize, and distribute that multimedia IP, which is mostly fragmented across 1 million different platforms right now, all in one place. And no network owns that platform. I think that's really, really critical. The creators do. And we imagine in the near future, you'll upload multimedia content, you'll grow your community, you'll engage directly with your fans. And since you own and retain your rights, you can set your royalties, you can enforce them through smart contracts that pay out automatically. You can automate IP licensing, you can automate windowing, and those agreements so that your community can create merchandise or they can engage with you in your story.
I just find it comical or maybe ironic that Bob Iger, former CEO and current CEO, he left and came back, retired, came back, actually said that IP should be owned by the creators, because Disney has created so much value by owning IP. He was like one of the largest acquirers of IP. Marvel Comics he bought, and then he turned it into 10, 20 years of rerun after rerun after rerun. It was actually unbelievable. It's so funny, these people who have done it, and then they turn around and say, now this is the right thing, we should do it that way after they got theirs. In fact, I think I read yesterday that the family who created Ziploc bags, the plastic little baggies, is now suing plastic industry for creating too much waste.
That's amazing.
But you said earlier that you had to find the right tech stack, or the right tech stack is here. So you need to find the right blockchain. Can you tell us about how you went about doing that?
Sure. I mean, in early days, we actually had considered being a layer one, but we, in the process, evaluated. You
thought better later on.
Totally. A good conversation with John Woo. But we evaluated, a number of layer ones. We were looking for a few things, obviously. Something that was built for scale, something that extended beyond the world of DeFi and kind of just meme coins and whatnot. I'm not saying they're not important. Nobody yell at me. But embrace this concept of interoperability at the foundational level. And we really felt like Avalanche had thought about the kind of architecture that would support entertainment and gaming long before any of the other chains had. And the people matter too. So it was really clear to me that, talking to people like John Nahas, there you are, front row, shout out, that it was really clear to me there was a really long tail view at the company and the operational excellence to get there. So, because you're asking people to move their creative careers over, right? So when it comes to trying a new platform, those top creators, they're gonna ask for a few things from us as an industry, right? And one of those things is to never think about blockchain, ever. They just don't wanna think about it. So that means simple, creator onboarding and consumer onboarding. They want really consistent fidelity and performance and how those creative experiences deliver. They need cost stability. So price volatility doesn't serve a production budget very well. And they need ownership and IP tracking to be taken really seriously, as well as kind of the transparency around royalties. They may still go for, hopefully, they still go for traditional distribution down the road. But they should be able to do that with new leverage and a kind of tidy legal framework tied to the smart contracts underneath. So we weren't thinking of building a game. We wanted to build an ecosystem that supported tomorrow's music and film and indie game studios. And I felt like the Avalanche team really understood that and worked with our team kind of every step of the way in developing the features that supported our goals.
That's awesome. What you're doing is what movies are really, and what a lot of entertainment content is storytelling. And since the beginning of time, people have always loved hearing stories. and telling stories because it allows them to escape their everyday boring day-to-day life, right? Lamina1 is now allowing the users to actually also create and be part of the creation process. So how does that affect the creators in this ecosystem when the users can also be creators?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a really good question of like in today's fragmented media sort of network, you know, system, we have 1 million apps and everything. How do you actually keep an IP universe alive and thriving or launch a new one? You can look at Marvel, obviously, you can look at Pokemon. A healthy IP today, even if it sort of has roots in one format, to survive, it really has to be able to propagate to like 1 million different formats now, right? And it has to have participation designed in because young fans expect interaction. The CEO of Netflix said, you know, we compete with and lose to Fortnite more than any other network, more than HBO, right? So more than half, you consider too that more than half of Gen Z consider themselves content creators. So Lamina1 and our partners together, you know, aim to provide the rails and the tooling for this kind of IP holder to engage in a community, in commerce directly, in collaborative world building. And the infrastructure, you know, to enable that new model extends from the foundational consensus layer all the way up through a fully integrated application layer and, you know, fiat on-ramps for the normies, right? So it must really be get on the platform with a click, lead with experience, discover an IP that you love, leverage these kind of no-code tools and templates to be able to publish, and AIGC to be able to co-create and make sure the framework underneath supports that going forward with derivative works. And the reason why this is so important when we talk to studios, like established franchises can actually tap their fan base early, you know, and they can engage in like launching a mini game or a campaign that encourages user-generated content and questing around like a theatrical debut, right? It's really important the window around a theatrical debut to determine the rest of your windowing. So that all de-risks distribution. And so instead of suing fans, you know, for violating your IP with derivative works, like you actually can provide a license and know that they're sort of behaving within those means. And then new IPs, on the other hand, who have a lot of flexibility with their rights, can incubate new stories directly with a community and then monetize them earlier in the life cycle.
You referenced Reed Hastings from Netflix, CEO of Netflix. He's actually, historically, he's been very right on many, many things. He's one of the few CEOs that were able to disrupt his own business. It used to be a DVD delivering service. He actually, when the cash flows was still very good, disrupted it and created streaming. The one thing that he was wrong about, he said there would be no advertising, and now there's advertising.
Right, yeah.
But in general, he is right. But I'll disagree with him on one more point. Maybe it's because he made this comment a little while ago, but maybe he should be saying his competition is not just Fortnite, but off the grid.
Yeah, fair. That's a good shout out for y'all.
Now, so when your users are trying to get engaged with the content, what really jazzes them up the most?
Yeah, I mean, for studio and IP partners, it's definitely the fact that they can finally realize a very healthy, kind of lucrative, self-sustaining UGC system, you know, that actually is rewarding for both sides, right? It's rewarding for the creators and it's rewarding for the fans. And for fans and creator economy types, it's definitely the ability to actually co-create with their favorite IPs and kind of like be seen by those IPs and rewarded for their investment, you know, over the course of years. And I think what we tried to do was just really lower the barrier of entry for participation in co-creation. You know, like you can leverage our no-code tools. You can upload a JSON file from your Unity or your Unreal game. We can grab those characteristics, so you can say, I want to allow fans to be able to create a customized laser gun and insert it into this game. And then, of course, like Avalanche with its newest features, then level up that fan experience of creating and owning digital assets and your identity by enabling interoperability at the core level with the right kind of standards-driven architecture. So, I mean, we imagine this kind of really robust economy where some creators and remixers just rise right to the top and become IP ambassadors, like the new kind of A&R people. They're tastemakers. And they're people that the larger community will actually look to understand which IPs are going to take off.
There's been a lot of frustration with tech companies and Hollywood because the smaller players, the individuals and the smaller companies can't really penetrate the system, if you will.
Yeah.
We spent the entire first part of it talking about how Avalanche 9000 and Avalanche enables people to create and to make this world a little more distributed as opposed to the 0.01% companies who have all the power.
That's right.
Now, I was asked by people to ask you one tough question because in Web 2, people thought the same thing will happen. New creators are happening on various platforms, and yet it's more of the same. Whereas, although there were new creators and they were creating different content in different forms, the value was still being captured by the people who own the platforms and not the actual creators.
Yeah.
So here's a tough question. What makes you think you can do it?
I mean, there's also just a groundswell of consumer excitement and creator excitement around it. So I am certain, I live in Los Angeles, I'm right in the middle of the entertainment business. I'm certain that we are in the middle of the next major evolution of the entertainment industry. There have been a couple, and I think this is the next big one. Over the last, over the last 60 days alone, we've experienced ourselves 335% growth. We have 108,000 active addresses, and we have not spent a lick of money on marketing or yacht parties at Token. I mean, if you like to go, fine. But our core mission is to reinvigorate the entertainment economy in a manner that both protects and provides a new path to prosperity for these artists. And the truth is, you asked why I'm excited. We talk to A-list talent every day who are really frustrated with the current system. And they are as passionate as we are to take story back from tech giants and streamers. I'll leave you with this anecdote. I'm fortunate enough to be a part of the financing and production group at the Venice Film Festival. So every year I go and I talk to hundreds of creators about their projects and their business models across immersive entertainment, film, and all different kinds of things. There was one VR piece, it was the first one that I saw this year, that I wanted to tell you about because I think it's really appropriate. So in 1874, Paris, the academies decided what constituted great art. Artists who didn't fit their criteria were just dismissed. They had nowhere to show their work, they had nowhere to earn a living. But one group of artists, after continual rejection, conspired to host their own salons to showcase and sell their work. Those artists are Manet, Monet, Pissarro, Degas. These are the artists that would go on to then define the genre of Impressionism. Those artists did not ask for permission, and the rest is history. So I think we cannot leave the future of the arts in the hands of these tech companies who don't share the same values. I mean, I'm definitely taking a huge risk. Someone said to me the other day, you may never work in Hollywood or big tech again, which I'm like, great. I'm hoping this really works out. But we all take a big risk by saying this out loud, yourselves included. But I just think that the stakes are too high to carry on with our heads in the sand. So we commit to a future that disrupts those power brokers who dominate our digital lives at any cost, growth at any cost. And we commit ourselves to the artists who, since the dawn of time, have practiced a talent that is known only to humans. And that is the ability to envision and foster community through the exchange of really beautiful stories. And that is a fight worth fighting.
Well, I think there's a real good chance that you can do something about it, and that this is like the Impressionist artist, this is the salon moment. There is enough frustration in the general populace. There's also the right infrastructure on blockchain and the right coordination mechanisms in Web3. So if it's ever going to happen, I think it's going to be now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Absolutely. Thank you.